Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Wolfheart, Draconian Darkness, on September 6th on Reigning Phoenix Music. The album has 9 tracks, 40 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a Finnish melodic death metal band. When I look at the design of this record, I see an album that at first glance may feel pretty straightforward, very simple. There's not much to it. You put these songs together and they kind of work themselves out in order to create some sort of cohesive experience. I don't think that's the case. When you look at the nature of these tracks, when you look at the nature of these songs, a lot of them have really interesting intros. And when you have a lot of songs with interesting intros, you're kind of creating reset points within the listening experience of the album. Or at least you could be doing that. So it's key to find out exactly where you need to put these songs in order for the album not to feel choppy and in order for the listening experience to be somewhat more fluid and not as interrupted, because those intros are always going to break a little bit of the flow of the album. The way they put this record together, I felt like it minimized that negative impact that those intros could have on the overall experience. They felt like needed pauses at the right time, ending song cycles that had a lot of brutality and a lot of heaviness. So having those breaks softens the experience, allows for a more easier way of digesting the record, which at the end of the day is going to give a lot more playability to the album, and it's going to make the album a lot more interesting overall. So great design from that standpoint. As far as the sound is concerned, I think this is an album that has to be looked at from two different perspectives. You have to look at from the orchestrational side of the record, and then the drum guitar heavier side, more natural side as far as the band's DNA is concerned. When it comes to that more natural side of the DNA of the band, I felt like this album was a little bit of a throwback to the first 3 records, where it has at times that more narrow experience, that more direct, heavy experience, that you're creating this winter soundscape or this winter soundtrack that always been a key element of Wolfheart and of what Wolfheart is all about. So this album definitely taps into that more nature side of their sound, into that more cold perspective side of their sound, pushing it to the forefront, allowing the drums and guitars together to create this avalanche of cold and heaviness coming at the listener, with then more melodic guitar sounds underneath it that peek through or that break through that ice or that avalanche of snow, making the songs heavy on one end but still very driven and melodic and melancholic on the other. On top of all of this, you have the orchestral side that, in my opinion, really enhances these tracks, almost giving them a cinematic vibe at times. Talk about soundtrack. It's a lot easier to create the perspective of a winter or of a nature soundtrack when you have the orchestrational side really enhancing those elements, really enhancing that perspective. The part about the orchestrational side of this album that I enjoyed the most, beyond the impact that it has on creating that cinematic perspective, is that the fact that it was not overused. It was used at the right time in the right tracks in order to create ebbs and flows, in order to change the perspective of the listener, and in order to create a sense of movement within the songs. Not just about size, not just about width, but creating movement. To me, this was important in order for those elements to be more impactful. If you have orchestrations on a record like this from the beginning of the track all the way to the end of the track on every single track, you start to lose impact. You start to lose the element of change, the element of surprise. You start to flatten out the record and really removing peaks and valleys from what the album could offer. Having the orchestrational side of the album define what the peaks and valleys are also allows the heavier side of the album to feel even heavier, to have more of a direct impact, to be more noticeable. Now, within that wall of sound created by guitars and drums, I have to say the drums on a Wolfheart album always are one of the highlights. At least for me, they are always one of the highlights because of the impact that they offer, how heavy, how brutal they are, and I never feel like they're overpowering my senses. It's a brutality that is digestible, is a brutality that is welcome, is a brutality that it dissipates itself and it blends extremely well with everything around it. It has this ability to almost become a sponge, that it's large that consumes everything, but it also absorbs everything within it. I really like the drum sound on this record. Once again, giving me a little bit of a throwback feel in terms of its essence, in terms of its impact. The guitars on this album are some of the best that I've heard from Wolfheart, at least in the last couple of records. I would say the last 3 records. The guitars on this album sound better, feel better, and let me start off by saying on the solo side, there's a complete change, or at least there is a complete growth in terms of what they give, what they offer, what they are, and how impactful they become on these songs. So you have tracks that at times feel cinematic, you have tracks at times that feel larger than life because of that orchestral side having that direct impact. Now imagine those songs with really short solos, solos that don't have the same sort of level of brightness, that don't have the same sort of level of size, of impact. There would be this weird experience where the song is trying to become something much larger than what it currently is, and then the solo just would fall short of that plateau. This record really understands the need for the solos to almost match the size of the orchestrational elements that the tracks already have. And I thought that was really well done throughout the entire album. Like I said, I think this record, guitar-wise, is one of the best that I've heard from them, at least over the last 3 records. It's an album that has incredible solos, song in and song out. The solos, the energy of the solos is matching the size of the songs, and I thought that was something that had been lacking at times when it came to Wolfheart records and when it came to solos, where the solos felt almost as restricted as the overall size of the songs were. In this case, because the size of the songs is a lot larger, so were the solos. I love that aspect of it. I love the fact that that core DNA guitar sound from Wolfheart is present on this album. You can feel the coldness, you can feel the ice, you can see it almost in terms of how the guitar sound penetrates through the heavier portion of what these songs are all about. Those penetrating melodic, dark, cold riffs really help define this album, and it bring forward that bloodline that always been there on Wolfheart records, which is that very specific tone, that very specific guitar delivery. Now, when it comes to the vocals, this album continues with some clean vocals. Perhaps not as much as some of the previous records, but it definitely still has a lot of clean vocals throughout. Now, I'm not a huge fan of clean vocals on a Wolfheart album. I like the approach on this record perhaps more so than on any other. A lot of the clean vocals on this record are more backing vocals, and they're used specifically more in the choruses where the songs are so big, because that's normally where you're going to see a more direct impact from the orchestrational side of the album. So going with clean vocals in those choruses where the orchestrations are already there emphasizes the size. It makes the songs a lot bigger and a lot brighter. If you go with harsh vocals in that sense, you have these two different elements that are pulling away from one another. The vocals are trying to ground the song, and the orchestrational elements are trying to expand the song. So using the clean vocals as backing vocals predominantly, there are some exceptions to that rule, but using them predominantly in that role, I feel like it fits Wolfheart a lot better. I think you can get a lot more out of it and still keep the core DNA of the band more intact. And I think this is a more balanced vocal performance. It defines itself perhaps with what Wolfheart is going to be in the future vocally, which is understanding that you can use these two elements, but one always going to have to surpass the other, and the other has to be there to enhance the more defined moments within songs themselves. This is a record that, in my humble opinion, connects the past, the present, and defines what the future of Wolfheart is going to be all about. The best album that Wolfheart released over the last 7 years. Easily. It's the more complete record. It's the record that has perhaps a more defined idea, more defined logic in terms of what you want out of it, connecting the past of the band extremely well with, like I said, the present and future, defining perhaps a new paradigm for Wolfheart without completely disconnecting from what got them to this point. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Ancient Cold. This is the opening track on the record, and I think this is a very cinematic song, a song that kind of defines what the album is going to be all about, because it has a really cool intro. It has great orchestrational sound. It's a big sounding song, specifically in the chorus. The orchestrational and clean vocals really elevate that chorus. It's a little bit more driven, more narrow, more heavier in the verses, with a heavy drum presence as well. Heavy guitars that emphasize movement, they emphasize size, that make that chorus have the impact that it needs to have, with a very old school style Wolfheart solo, which is something you're going to see throughout this album. Incredible solos that add beauty, that add to the atmosphere of the song, but in a lot of cases match the size that the tracks overall have because of that orchestrational presence. I really enjoy the solo on this track. I really enjoy this as an opening track because it has all the condiments. It has the clean vocals, has the harsh vocals, has the prototypical more narrow, heavy sound in the verses. The orchestrational is coming in the chorus, creating a much bigger presence. Over the top solo, incredible solo, really setting the tone that this song has all of the pieces to what this puzzle is going to be all about as you navigate down these 9 tracks. Next you have Death Leads the Way, a more methodic, a slower track, and with that traditional heavy guitar sound, heavy riff, powerful drums, not overpowering in the verses, very contained in the verses, and then a little bit more room, becoming slightly bigger in the chorus. But when you have a very contained verses, it's easy to go slightly bigger in the chorus without needing to do that much. Now the clean vocals and harsh vocals, the partnership between the two in the chorus is really what sets this song apart. This is another track that has a great solo, but this track comes down to the partnership between the clean and harsh vocals in the chorus. The way they work in tandem with one another really elevates this track, really separates this track from all the others around it. Last but definitely not least, the Gale. This is the closing song on the album, and I think this is perhaps the best song on the entire record, and I'm going to go as far as to say this is one of the best Wolfheart songs ever. It's a great track. First of all, I love the acoustic opening intro that the song has. It has a really extended opening intro acoustic that then blends into a more, that has some melodic, melancholic aspects to it, but then it blends into this big heavy wall of sound that still has that same melancholy melody underneath the big heaviness that the track just exploded onto. Then it dips back again into a more acoustic, melancholic sound. It has this explosion, and then it kind of retracts back again, and it goes back to its point of origin. Then it leads on with clean vocals with that acoustic guitar behind it, very stripped down, a very stripped down approach that allows you to really focus on a different side of the track. It's less about the sound, and it becomes more about the vocal performance and the atmosphere and the essence that comes from it. Then the harsh vocals come in, the sound increases, that heaviness that we saw, that burst at the beginning, comes back again, and with it comes the harsh vocals, and then the song starts to build towards something completely different. It's a track that has so many moving pieces, that has so many different momentums to it, but the way they're put together, they blend one into the next perfectly. And the essence of this song, the clean vocals, the harsh vocals, the acoustic side, the heavier side, I think this is the most finished melodic death metal song that they had ever written. Wolfheart has never written a song, in my humble opinion, that is as close to what your prototypical finished melodic death metal sound is all about as this song is. This song has that all of those prototypes built into it in terms of how they use the acoustic side, the clean vocals, the harsh vocals, the heavier side. It's a very interesting song. To me, it's one of the best, if not the best on the record, just because it brings back the band to where they're coming from. It really represents their DNA in terms of being, like I said, a more traditional Finnish melodic death metal track through and through. This is it, Wolfheart, Draconian Darkness, out September 6th. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.